Hey there, it's Jody Sutter of the Sutter Company, and it's Just Ask Jody. It's that time when I take a question from an agency around an issue they're having with business development, and I'll answer that question in 4 minutes or less. And today, the question, before I get to it, requires a little bit of setup. It comes from an agency that recently pitched a client on a rebranding project, and they are finding that things have come to a standstill. I'm just going to read you what they wrote. They said, "We're in a holding pattern. We suspect there are possibly some internal struggles on the client side, or possibly that they don't have a strong advocate for the work that we want to do. What are some ways to either get them started or overcome their anxiety about getting started?" So this is a great question. And one of the reasons I really like this question is that I have a feeling it reflects a situation that many of you have been in. Unfortunately, there's also not one silver bullet type of answer. But I think the key to overcoming the situation, or the key to managing the situation, is understanding what the obstacles are. So the questioner is already starting to ask herself, well, what are those things that our client is facing? Is it an internal struggle? Is it that there's not a strong advocate? So I'd say the first thing you got to do is figure out what that is. And the way you do that is by having a conversation with your client. And the way you make that conversation as successful as possible is to have the conversation with the key decision maker. The thing is that what I often find is that agencies aren't always having conversations with the key decision maker. Often there's an intermediary who's been assigned to run the pitch, and the person who has ultimate control over the decision, over the budget, over the ability to say yes to greenlight the project, they're protected in some way by that intermediary. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're not going to have that same conversation with the intermediary, because you still need to know what the root cause of the obstacle is before you can start to figure it out. But if you're having the conversation with a decision maker, you're going to get to that root cause faster. If you've got to go through an intermediary, it could be a little bit more of a challenge depending on the relationship also you have with that intermediary. And then once you do figure out what the root cause is, you may or may not be able to exert some control over the situation. You may or may not be able to affect a positive outcome. So where you can affect a positive outcome is if the hesitancy is around your scope of work, if it's around your proposed solution, then that's something that you can control. You can go back with a strong argument once you understand what their issues are as to how you're going to alleviate those concerns. But there are some areas that you might not be able to control. And again, the questioner also touches on those a little bit when she asks, maybe there are internal struggles on the client's side, or maybe they don't have a strong advocate. That could very well be. And if those are the issues, then you're not going to have as much control over that outcome. There's very little that you can do as the agency to magically create a strong advocate for you and for the project if that doesn't already exist. And so that's a bummer, but when you can understand what the root cause is, and you can discover whether you can or can't affect a positive outcome, if you can't, then you can make a critical decision about whether it's worth your time and investment, a continued investment in time or money in trying to win the project. Sometimes, unfortunately, I wish this was never an answer, but sometimes you do have to walk away if it seems like it's going to be an issue that you can't overcome. But like I said, figure out what the root cause is, and then you can start to solve the problem. Only when you know what the problem is can you come up with a solution. And at the very beginning of the pitch, this is a rule that you should take for any pitch that you enter into. Make sure that you've identified the decision maker and you're talking to that person too. That's it for this Just Ask Jody. If you've got a question you'd like me to answer on another Just Ask Jody in the future, you can email me at jody@thesuttercompany.com.